One late afternoon, golden sunlight filtered through the window, casting a warm glow over an old wooden table. On the sofa, Emily, a 25-year-old young woman, sat across from her grandfather, James, a man in his mid-70s whose eyes held countless memories of time. Before them, 2 cups of tea released a gentle aroma, inviting them into a conversation filled with nostalgia. "Grandpa, there are some questions I've always wanted to ask you, but I guess I've never had the courage to," Emily said, her eyes glistening with curiosity. Grandfather James smiled, set down his cup, and nodded. "Well, today is the day. Ask away, and I'll answer truthfully." Emily took a deep breath and asked, "Did you ever love anyone before you met Grandma?" Grandfather James leaned back slightly, his gaze drifting into the distance as if flipping through the pages of his past. "Oh, of course. You think I had only one love in my life? But love back then was nothing like today. There were no phones to text, no social media to check up on someone. We had handwritten letters, and sometimes we had to wait weeks or even months for a reply. And there were people who remained only as beautiful memories in my heart." Emily smiled, still intrigued. "Do you ever regret not choosing someone else?" Grandfather James looked at Emily with deep affection. "No, because if I had chosen differently, I wouldn't have had my son, and I wouldn't have you sitting here with me today." Emily was silent for a moment, letting his words sink in. She continued, "Did you ever think about divorce?" This time, Grandfather James sighed, his voice turning softer. "Marriage isn't always easy, dear. There were days when your grandmother and I argued, days when we felt tired, ready to give up. But back in our time, divorce wasn't the first solution when things got tough. We tried to fix things instead of throwing them away. And maybe because of that, we made it through decades together." Emily thought for a moment and asked, "So, if you lived in today's world, would you have chosen to divorce?" Grandfather James chuckled softly. "Maybe. But I also understand that love is not just about fleeting emotions. It's about patience and accepting each other's imperfections. Some things, if you try hard enough, eventually become more beautiful." Emily nodded, feeling a newfound perspective on love and marriage. She then laughed and decided to test him with a fun question. "Did you ever skip school or do anything rebellious when you were young?" Grandfather James burst into laughter. "Oh, of course. Who do you think I am? I once skipped school just to see Elvis Presley perform. But if my parents had found out, I would have been in big trouble." Emily was amazed. "So you had a rebellious youth too?" Grandfather James winked. "We all did. The only difference is that back then, we didn't have TikTok to show it off." Both of them laughed together. In that moment, the generational gap seemed to disappear, replaced by a connection between 2 souls, one who had been young and one who was still growing. But then, Emily paused. Lowering her voice, she asked, "Is there anything you wish you had known sooner?" Grandfather James fell silent for a while, then his voice turned solemn, full of emotion. "I wish I had spent more time with the people I love, instead of worrying so much about work or money. Because in the end, when I look back, the moments with family are the most valuable. Not success, not fame, but simple moments like this, sitting together, sharing and listening." Emily gently held his hand. "I will remember that, Grandpa." They sat there, in the golden evening light, quietly embracing the moment without needing to say another word. Sometimes, Connection is not about what is spoken, but about feeling heard, understood, and loved. Before their conversation ended, Emily looked at her grandfather and smiled. Talking with you today made me realize time changes, but some values always remain important. Thank you for sharing, Grandpa. Grandfather James smiled warmly, his eyes filled with wisdom. Thank you for listening. Keep asking questions. That's how we truly understand each other. Outside the window, the sun slowly disappeared behind the trees, but its warmth remained, just like the bond between two generations, never fading away.